Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm not used to having a clip on my,
Move up a little more, Bill.
this thing?
Move up a little.
Okay. I'm actually a neighbor of yours. I live right around the corner, on the corner of North Valley and Connecticut. For 19 years, I lived on the corner of Weymouth and Connecticut. And I thought I had found the home that just fit me perfectly, and I would just stay there forever. 3 years ago, a home came on the market 300 yards from my present home. It was built in 1940. It was owned by a former pathologist at Moore Regional, Dr. Stuber. Do you know the name? Dr. Stuber raised his family in the house for 58 years.
Wow.
And he had 7 children. Nicola Squires, who is here with me today, Nicola does videotaping for me sometimes on a weekly radio show that I host called All Things Moore County. And I've been doing it for 13 years. But don't be impressed. I volunteer to do it. It's a pleasure, it's a privilege to do it. And I get to talk about things that are non-political on purpose, and to talk about things about Moore County that makes Moore County such a great place to live. So Nicola had worked with the listing agent on Dr. Stuber's home, unbeknownst to me. And I saw the home and I fell in love with it. But it was frozen in time. It had terrazzo floors everywhere. It was a block home. You can drive up right past the Weymouth house, and if you look to your right, there's a white stucco sprawling ranch with a pool in the backyard, which I didn't want, but I inherited. And I renovated the home, and I completely gutted the home except for the shell of the home. But everything inside the house is brand new. It took about 8 months to do it. The roof came off. And I had the fortune of restoring the home, but maintaining the spirit, the original spirit of the home, that I was very proud of. Of the 7 Stuber children, one of them was the executor of their parents' will, their mom's will. Dr. Stuber passed away in the 90s, and his wife passed away in 2018. So in 2019, the children put the house on the market for sale. And I invited the son, who was the executor, to come down and be part of the radio show. And I wanted him to see the remodel. Because when my parents passed, my dad passed away in 1990. He would have been 102 this year. My mother passed away in 2007. So my sisters, my brother, and I became orphans in 2007. And we sold my mom's house, but we thought it was our house because we grew up in the house. And it meant something to us who bought the home and what they did with it. And so that experience translated to this home, and I wanted to preserve the home. So when Stuber came down to see it, he came on the radio show. Nicola was able to come in and film and videotape the show, which features a lot of before and after pictures of the home. And today you can go onto YouTube. It's about a 40-minute show with the before and after photographs and Mr. Stuber's son. And all you have to do is go to YouTube and type in Bill Sahadi, revisiting your childhood home. And so it's there to see. I didn't have any props today. I came from Brooklyn, New York. That's where I was born and raised till I was about 5th grade. And my dad moved our family to Tenafly, New Jersey in Bergen County. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. And I grew up and went to Lafayette College in Easton, Pennsylvania, and I graduated there in 1975. I was an avid golfer, and in 1979 I was living in the Philadelphia area, and I was in the costume jewelry business. And I met some aspiring LPGA players in Boca Raton, Florida in February of 1979. I was hitting golf balls on the range, and I look out on the range and all these girls are out there with their carts, picking up the balls, raking the traps, and I thought, oh, this is crazy. Bob Tosky actually worked at this club when he was doing the PGA golf schools. So I hit balls all morning, and at lunchtime I went in, I had lunch, I came back out, and all these ladies were now dressed in their golf gear, and they were on the driving range hitting balls with me. One swing prettier than the other. Who were they? Bonnie McGowan, who is Peggy Kirkbell's daughter. Sally Austin, who lives in Pinewild now, who was an LPGA player and very active in the LPGA, and she still teaches today at Pine Needles. So I met a bunch of these ladies, and they invited me to Pinehurst. And they said, have you ever been? I said, no, I have not. But I knew it was the capital of golf. So I came down in July of 1979, played golf for about a week, fell in love with the area, thought I was hot stuff, and I bought a $40,000 2-bedroom, 2-bath townhouse at a place that used to be called Lake Surf. Today it's known as Wood Lake. I thought I was really hot stuff. And I remember telling my father, I'm 4 years out of college, I said, you don't understand. I said, the area of where Wood Lake is, one day is going to become part of the center of the Southern Pines, Pinehurst universe. And all it's going to do is grow, grow, and grow. And I brought in the example of Foxfire at the same time because it was a newer resort. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong. Today, Wood Lake is still on the outside of the circle. Foxfire is still on the outside of the circle. But the Pinehurst Southern Pines area has grown so much that the center has just become stronger. But that's how I first got here. It took me 20 years to move here, and I moved here in 1999. I had spent 22 years of my life after college being in the costume jewelry business. And it was a successful business. It kept me busy. It gave me free time to play golf. But I didn't have the passion for what I was doing, and I couldn't reinvent myself every year. And it got harder and harder. And my passion was real estate. So during my many trips to this area in the 1980s, I would come down and I would buy property. I would rent it, I would hold it, I would sell it. I was one of the first 12 people to purchase land in Pinewild in the mid-1980s, before they could even give you a deed. And they had a lottery, and it was an old hunting preserve. And so I bought these 2 lots, and it was in the day when if you could fog up a mirror and you paid your taxes, you qualified for credit. So I qualified to buy these two lots. But it kind of made me nervous, so I spoke my father into purchasing one of them. And this was in 1988. Well, he passed away in 1990, so he never got to build the home that he wanted to build. So from 1999 on, when I moved here, I've spent 22 years here in the real estate business. Don't want to talk about the real estate business because it's a crazy world we live in right now. And it's not about, there's so many people in our business and so many different generations in our business that it makes me reflect on the way my father raised us. When my mom passed away in 2007, we had a service for her in Brooklyn, New York. And I remember getting up at the Meal of Mercy and saying that the greatest gift that our parents gave us was the lack of any sense of entitlement. We were raised from a very young age to almost like sing a song for your dinner. Every day you had to go out and prove yourself. The world owed you nothing. And you just had to earn your way. And it made us all very independent. We grew up with a lot of tough love. I never got an award for a fourth place finish in anything as a kid. I remember just the opposite happened with me. If I put myself in a situation as a kid, a 10-year-old or a 13-year-old, my father almost took joy in watching me fail. He made me fail because he knew I was strong enough to rise above it and that I would brush it off and somehow I would learn. And that was tough love. Today, we live in a world, I live in a world where there are 3 other generations of professional people who are doing the same thing that I do. And there is a sense of entitlement that I don't get, that some people have. So what do they do in our world today? How do we broadcast ourselves? Well, I'm used to broadcasting myself this way, just by speaking. I'm used to interviewing guests on the radio show just by speaking, eyeball to eyeball. Today, the younger generation, they think the way to market themselves is to have a success and then go home and start typing on Facebook how great their life is and that they're going to go to the beach because they look good, because they had a success. And today everything is about looking good, presenting an image, and usually it's an electronic image. The unique thing about Moore County is that it reminds a lot of us of the towns we grew up in as kids, where there was an intimacy, there was a sense of neighborhood. We're not an urban area where there's a lot of anonymity, so you really do get to know people in an intimate way. And I see brokers all the time from all different age groups who have a different set of rules as to how they feel they should market themselves. A lot of it is based on how they were raised. You know that expression, helicopter parents, where they don't want the child's self-esteem to be damaged or injured because it might have long-term effects. I can tell you that the way we were raised, we didn't always love our parents. We thought they were a little hard on us. We fought. I rolled my eyes a lot at my parents. They were always right, unfortunately. But I fought them tooth and nail. But that's how I learned. And my parents had the patience to let us go through those things with them, even though they knew we were wrong. They knew we would also learn. I came here back in 2008, and they had breakfast meetings at the time. And I actually came in one day and spoke to a couple of gentlemen. That day, after I left the meeting, this is a true story, I went home. Now I was living on the corner of Weymouth and Connecticut. And there was a truck, a delivery truck coming to my house. And what they were delivering were about 4 or 5 items that were from my parents. My mother had passed away in April of '07. My 2 sisters and my brother and I sold her house. And my one sister, who's retired from Wall Street, she set up an Excel spreadsheet with all the contents and how do we divide everything up. Well, in our family, we all said, no, you take it, no, you take it, no, you take it. Whatever you want is fine. We don't want anything. That's how we all were. At the end of the day, my brother and I had a list this big of the mementos that we wanted. I got my father's pipe collection. I got a prayer rug. I got a marble pedestal that sits right inside my front door. And I got an amethyst rock that I had actually purchased for my parents when I was in college because I liked it. And they put it in their den and hidden in the corner, but I loved it. Those were the things I wanted. My brother, who just retired from the NBA, he was a special events planner, he had a list this long. My sisters, their list was this long. We were fine with it. To this day, my sisters still have a lot of my parents' contents and furniture in a storage facility. This is 14 years later in New Jersey, paying all kinds of money to store furniture they'll never be able to use. Both my sisters live on the Upper West Side of New York City. One is retired, the other is a writer for CNN. And their homes are the size of a minute. As far as New York goes, it's probably more than that. So we learned a lot from our parents, and it taught us not to be entitled, to make your own way. And one of the best lessons my father ever taught me, he didn't even know he taught it to me. He died a young man. He died of a heart attack when he was 70. He was playing tennis with a guy I went to high school with. And my father wouldn't play doubles. He only wanted to play singles. He was a good athlete. Well, he had a heart attack and passed away. The last couple of years of his life, he had retired, or semi-retired, and there was sometimes a little bit of a melancholy about him. He looked over his shoulder, and I think he looked back over his life about maybe some things that he didn't do, risks that he didn't take. But he had 4 children. He and my mom were married from the time that he was 30. So he made sacrifices, and so I'm more independent and didn't have any dependents. So I had a little bit more leeway to take risks. And what my father taught me indirectly was, don't be afraid to take opportunities to do things. It doesn't matter if you succeed or if you fail. It matters if you take the risk. And it matters if you don't. So I've taken educated risks. And I think about him because I don't want to leave anything on the table. If I see an opportunity, it's a privilege to be able to have opportunities. And you take advantage of them and you manage them. And indirectly, he taught us very well. Back in 2009, after being in the real estate business here for about 10 years, we had a dip in our market across the country. Movies came out, it's too big to, Wall Street, too big to fail. Real estate prices got hit hard. And I got a phone call from a guy who owns a radio station. And he said, would you be willing to come on and do a radio show? Talk about real estate. Put a happy spin on it. I said, Steve, I'll put an honest spin on it. I'm not going to say something that's not true. So back in August of 2009, I started to do a show called All Things Real Estate. And it was just an informational show. And it lasted for just under 2 years. And we ran out of topics. We talked about every real estate topic under the sun that you could possibly imagine. I had every attorney and appraiser on the show, or other real estate brokers. And so I went to the guy who owns the station, and I said, can we change the name of the show to All Things Moore County? It would give me a little bit more leeway to bring in a multitude of guests. Myron Dice has been on the show quite a few times. We've talked about some of his social work. We've talked about the organization Christmas for More, which has been very successful. And we've had on many guests in public service or community service. This area is such a great giving community. And the volunteer effort that is made, the number of volunteers who are available to do things is very valuable to Moore County. Even as we're growing and we're starting to get a little bit of that urban feel in certain areas, not a lot, we still have that hometown quality about living here, which makes it a great place to be. So I got a lot of people to come on the show over the years. I've gotten to know a lot of people, and I've gotten to listen to their stories. And when listening to their stories, I have this catalog in my head that there are two types of people in the world: initiators and reactors. People come on the radio. We don't normally videotape the show. But when we do, it goes to YouTube. But if you're on the radio and you're speaking about something, you have to modulate, you have to be passionate, your credibility has to come through, your conviction has to come through. And sometimes I wonder why some people do it, because they will be meek or timid and they won't project what it is that they are very passionate about. Bottom line is, it's been a great forum to get to know people. It's been a great forum for me and a great responsibility for me to make sure that the information that we give is accurate and fair. It's not a place to come to advertise. Although, last weekend we had a guy on who owns a company called Premier Gasworks out of Jackson Springs. He talked about something most homeowners don't know anything about: their fireplaces. Do you have a vented fireplace or a ventless fireplace? Is your propane tank buried or above ground? He talked about gas lines. He talked about tankless hot water heaters, fireplace inserts, oxygen depletion sensors, things that are very important to people. And yes, as a result of the information he gave, I hope his phone rings. But we're not out there touting them, just asking them for good information. The show airs on the weekends. It's on Saturdays at 10:05 in the morning and Sunday evenings at 8:05. It's at 97.3 FM or 990 AM. The station has other components, political components to the show, which I have nothing to do with, don't want to have anything to do with. In the climate that we live in today, I have enough stress, I have enough to do on my to-do list, not to have to worry about politics. And I wish a lot of people would feel the same way. So we purposely avoid politics. Next week we have a financial advisor coming on with 2 attorneys and a counselor who specialize in working with women in transition, specifically as a result of divorce, to help them with their financial management. Not political, but important. People don't talk about it. Nicola, who, by the way, she's from Long Island, New York, settled here with her husband, who is a service member and has 3 children. I met her back in 2008, I'm going to say. She started photographing homes. Well, we've been working together ever since. She also does all the videotapes on the radio shows, but that wasn't enough. She and a partner decided to open a coffee shop in downtown Aberdeen called High Octane, which is in business today, but that wasn't enough. So now, in addition to it being a coffee shop right by the railroad tracks, she now has become an event planner. She's got to do different events to get people to come in. Not that they wouldn't come in, but sometimes on a Friday night or a Saturday, they'll either have a food truck, they'll have a musical event, and it's a place to come with your friends and have a cup of coffee. So she's taken on quite a bit. She's a self-generator. She doesn't look to the world to say, how do I feel today? She doesn't look at the sky and go, ooh, it's cloudy, I'm not going to feel good. She'll go out and make her own weather. And when I go back to talking about initiators and reactors, we're always looking for people who want to make their own weather. And they'll spit into the wind, so to speak. If the wind is blowing in your face, so what? You just sort of dodge the bullets and you move forward. I've lived here for 22 years, but I first came here in 1979. And I'm very grateful for the life that I have, the opportunities that I've had. And even though my father passed in 1990, his presence is like yesterday. The amount of influence that he had on me as a parent, I wish I could thank him. I guess that's one of the complexities of life. Sometimes you wish you could go back and say something, but Myron asked me to come and talk, and I said, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't want to bore you with real estate because there are 480 people who can do the same thing. We live in a world right now where that topic dominates the news, especially the local news. But I've enjoyed the process of building up a business and mentoring those brokers who have the DNA, so to speak, to initiate, to self-generate, to be their own boss, run their own business, not look to somebody else because they think the grass is greener on the other side. There are lots of people like that. Your eyesight, not as good as it used to be. but your vision and your perspective get better and better and better. And you get to see the whole playing field. And so I'm at that stage right now, and I like the idea of paying it forward and maybe trying to be a little bit of a tough love advocate for the people that I believe in. I just wanted to cross a couple of thoughts that I had with you. I hope that you'll go to YouTube. I hope you'll type in my name, Bill Sahadi, and just type in the words "Revisiting Your Childhood Home." It's an interesting show. I love the process of renovating. I did the Bush Cottage downtown on Ash Street back in 2012, and that's the home that sits opposite the tennis courts with the posts, the big porch, and that was a tear down. And that home was built in 1908. And Dr. Bush was, I believe, the first osteopathic physician in the state of North Carolina who lived in the house, saw his patients in the house, raised his kids in the house, and it fell into disrepair. Well, today it's, to me, and I don't own the house anymore, I sold it after I renovated it, it's the premier single-family house in downtown Southern Pines that is truly walking distance to town. Sometimes you read in the paper, Southern Pines, walking distance to town. Yeah, if you're an Olympic athlete. Some of the distances are so long, but with the military families moving into town and the demographics changing, this area is just busting at the seams. And we hope that the growth stays somewhat controlled. So I just wanted to come in and share a few things. I know you've had Paul Murphy on, who is a great guy. He's been on the show before. I think Ann Friesen is coming next month. She's been on the show, an outstanding spokesperson, very passionate lady. You'll enjoy her very much. I mean, she oozes credibility and conviction. So I don't know if you would have any questions for me at all, but I've enjoyed this.
Any questions?
You touched on it a little
Just
bit.
a moment. So everyone can hear.
You touched on it briefly, right at the end, but for many, many years, this whole area, people move in and they say, I don't want any change. The next year they move in, they say, I don't want any change from this.
Right.
Yet now, in your opinion, what do you think the future holds for this area based on this philosophy?
Well, I think that the neighborhoods that make up Pinehurst and Southern Pines and Whispering Pines, the vintage areas, the pockets of neighborhoods that look the same today as they did in the 1970s or 80s, those values are only going to hold or increase. I think part of the landscape of Moore County has changed, and not for the better, where there are a lot of what I call Federal Witness Protection Program subdivisions being built to accommodate the influx of the younger demographic. The military is a strong driving force, and jobs are the #1 determining factor for growth. And in real estate, we're seeing the demand for new construction. So I love to spend time in the areas that look to me like they did when I first came here in 1979, because I thought I died and went to heaven. But there are pockets here that I drive through and I go, oh, this is not what I was hoping for. I think there has to be a balance. There's an urban exodus from large cities to come here. People can work from home, they can work remotely, and I hope that people are committed to loving the area and preserving as much of it as they possibly can.
Any other questions?
I appreciate,
It's a privilege to have you here.
yeah, thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.